Okay, hi, thanks for having us. And my name's Jacob Rapp. You have my bio here on the sheet here. And I'm senior manager for all of SDN marketing, and recently joined HP from Cisco, where I ran the technical marketing team for pretty much Nexus Data Center and SDN and all that fun stuff there. But I've been around the industry for about 13, 14 years and various different places, Juniper, HP, Juniper and Force 10, now in Dell and some other places.
So my name is Chris Young, and I am a consulting technical marketing engineer for HP. Obviously, I had to think about that, so that's a fairly new title. I've been in this role about 7-8 months. Before that, pre-sales. Before that, I was call manager guy. So I'm sorry. I've been in the industry again about 15 years as well, and I've also, strangely enough, gone from CCIE to network management evangelist in general. So that's me.
Great, then we have Eric.
I'm Eric Papier. I'm responsible for the technical marketing organization at HP Network.
And Terry?
I'm Terry Shiozaki, and I'm responsible for social media for HP Networking and HP Storage.
Great, so kind of diving right in here. We have only a couple slides, and then we'll get down to the meat of it, because that's why we're here. So first of all, I don't know if any of you have seen this. We've used it in the past for a while now, but it just kind of reiterates where we've been going with SDN and what we've been doing with it. So we actually worked, HP Labs worked with Stanford on Project Athene back in 2007. And then started demoing OpenFlow enabled switches in 2008 and kind of progressed through there. We started with some lighthouse customers with our OpenFlow enabled devices. Our first 10 in 2009, expanding to 60 in 2010. And then we started delivering our first commercially available OpenFlow switches in 2011. In 2012, more lighthouse customers, more applications, and our controller as well. And we'll be talking a bit more about our controller, because our controller is going GA in November, so about a month away. We actually were going to put the controller on the hard drives, but we figured we can just send you a download link and it might be a little bit easier. So please let us know if you want. We can get you the beta controller now if you want to play around with it, or in November we can get you the GA version of it. And then, just a little bit, probably like 2-3 weeks ago at VMworld, we announced our federated APIs with VMware, some of our integration with NSX controller, and even more SDN apps. So we've been really focusing on kind of like the business of what SDN means. Because I think for the past year, 2 years, 3 years maybe, software-defined networking is kind of going on this like hype cycle curve, like way up, and everyone's talking about like legacy networks, problems with programming, programmability, problems with like human middleware, like guys in the middle, CLI, etc. So what we're trying to do is take it one step further of what's the problems with SDN adoption. Like what do enterprises need to get SDN out there? And how do they deliver that? So one thing that we've been this is kind of a high level vision slide. So we're going to drill down a bit deeper and show some demos and actual products of what we're doing in kind of each of these categories. But it's kind of like a high level of where we're going with SDN. So really focus on the business apps. So the actual applications that are driving in the enterprise, and what do they need from the network, and why have they been held back by the network? And of course, there's the manageability, automation pieces that SDN promises to bring. But really, what's in it for the applications? What's in it for the end user and their experiences? Because that's really going to make SDN adoption in the market, right? I mean, if enterprises actually see a real business benefit out of it, then I think SDN adoption will kind of take off from there. So we want to do it across both data center, campus, and branch. So there's not many vendors out there that are, some of them are talking about data center, some are talking about campus and branch. Some of them have one solution in one place, a different solution in another place. But HP, we want to have one solution that spans all of networking. So campus branch, routing, in the future wireless LAN, everything. Because I mean, if you look at a user application, for example, Microsoft Link, where there's a component of a Link server in a data center, and then there's the user sitting off a campus. And if you don't have a joint solution that focuses across the board, then you really can't deliver SDN. Right? You're just delivering a piece of it in the data center, a piece of it in the campus. And then our goal always is to follow open standards and ecosystem. So we want to create open ecosystems, and we want to follow standards and also drive the standards. So where there isn't a standard, we want to work on developing a standard. So I think if we look at the southbound APIs, say from the controller down to the network, we have OpenFlow. We'll talk a little bit about our open APIs into the controller, but I think there's still some room in the industry to develop standardization around these APIs, because everyone kind of has their own APIs northbound, which are open, so everyone can kind of go look at it, but there needs to be a way to drive that through the standards as well. And we want to reignite innovation and make it easily accessible. So previously, it's taken a lot of money and time and effort to develop anything innovative within networking. You really have to go develop something in an ASIC or in hardware, or if you want to actually develop an application across SDN, you got to go buy a bunch of kit and install it in a lab somewhere and go kick it around, and then you probably got to have a pretty good relationship with the vendor you're trying to integrate with, whether it's HP, Cisco, Juniper, whoever, right? You got to have some really good relationships to really understand what's going on, to be able to develop across it. So we want to make it really easy for developers to innovate within our platforms. So each of these pieces, they're kind of high level here, but we're going to drill down in kind of what we're doing in each of these categories to make it real and in the industry.
If you talk about open infrastructures, how far would you limit yourself there, or would you go beyond that as things that are not integrated in the open standards ecosystems?
So,
would you be able to do more if it is HP hardware or not? Would you go beyond?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you look at a controller, I've had this question before where it's, okay, well, why is your controller better with HP hardware than just like, say, an Open Daylight controller with HP hardware? So I think if you look at...
Or the other way around.
Yeah, or the other way around.
Do more because it's HP hardware instead of its Juniper hardware?
Yeah, so I mean, I think if you look at we'll actually show some demos here of our integration with our management tools and our integration within the controller and the management tools working together, and with our partners, and tie in like their technical services on top of that. You have kind of like this complete package that has some significant benefit. So I think that's what a lot of enterprises are looking for, is they're not looking for just a pure open source version of it, right? They want something that is deployable and that's going to be supported and stood behind, and someone to help partner along the way.
I would say that the reason why companies want an open source version is so that they can build on top of it,
Sure, yeah,
to meet their specific needs. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, there's going to be a lot of enterprise customers that the biggest concern is, please make it work when it breaks.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so that dichotomy is going to be important, especially, Ethan's probably talked to several people about this that are deploying SDN for the first time. It scares the hell out of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So holding hands helps.
Yeah, I think there's a. Actually, I'll get to it in a second, but yeah, I mean, we completely see that too, is that it's a journey. It's not like, hey, just go, I mean, we'd love everyone to go rip and replace everything with HP all at once, but we know that's not going to happen, and we know it's a journey, and that scares people as well. Is that there's this new SDN technology, how do we get to nirvana of it actually solving my business problems and increasing it?
And I think from an HP standpoint, why HP on HP? Why would an HP solution get you some stuff? There's some things that haven't been figured out. It's not likely that everybody's going to go, hey, rip out my entire network and go SDN. So we're going to have situations where you're going to have hybrid networks, where you're going to have parts of a switch that are legacy, normal 802.1 like bridge stuff going on, OSPF, all that good stuff, and other maybe a hybrid-enabled OpenFlow VLAN. So how does that get turned on? How does those ports get into that? Well, that's going to be some traditional network management stuff, maybe SNMP, maybe Telnet. So having a tool which, given that we have time to get through this, I'm going to be able to show you some of that stuff. That'll be able to take, okay, let's take this HP switch, cart off this side of it, we'll make this open flow enabled and point it towards the controllers at that point. That's where some of the value add starts to happen, is to make this a lot easier than having engineers getting down and doing curl scripts and all that fun and games, right? Down at the CLI, right?
Yeah, and then as you're moving into like OpenFlow 1.3 and different carving of tables, like, there is a hardware component to this, right? There is a way to build switches that are OpenFlow enabled, and especially OpenFlow 1.3, and you knowing that tight integration and what needs to happen with a campus switch versus a data center switch versus a router. That integration point will be interesting from a controller standpoint. Knowing exactly how those switches work downstream and the capabilities. And as we move from not only just OpenFlow, we look at overlay technology such as like VXLAN or NVGRE or anything like that. We want to integrate there as well. So we have this kind of view at kind of a solution that we're putting together across the different layers, right? You have the infrastructure layer, control layer, application layer, and this application layer is the SDN applications. So there is a business layer on top of this, business apps on top of this as well. But there's really and then there's design services across the top, or really across the whole package. And then you have management, your intelligent management center, and we have what Chris was talking about, this SDN manager integrated there as well to look at the whole overall SDN components within the network. So within this application layer, I don't know if you saw the announcement. Has everyone heard the announcement on Monday around our SDN App Store? Or
I saw something about it.
Okay. So we're going to dive into some detail there. So really the components that we're going to dive a bit more detail into, and feel free to ask questions about any of these things, are really we're going to talk about what we're doing to enable actual SDN applications within the market. What are some of the use cases for them? So I think in the end, it's what I was saying before. It's really when the business sees benefit out of it, that'll increase adoption drastically. Because if they say, okay, well, SDN will provide my Microsoft Link application a lot better quality of service, and I could just go click on an application, download it into a controller, and I'm ready to go, and it's fully supported by HP and tested by HP as well as Microsoft as like a joint solution, then the barrier for entry becomes very small, and they're able to deploy that application. Or it's deploying an application versus deploying SDN.
Does that specific application exist?
Yeah, it does. So
can you comment on exactly what it does and how it works? Because I'd like to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually have a demo. So all of these applications that we have in here, we actually have a demo in our booth as well. So we wanted to, there's actually some nice demo of this application itself. But basically within Microsoft Link, they have open APIs as well, and then that are published. So we worked with Microsoft actually early on before they even got published, and created this, federation between our controller and their servers, their Link servers. So it's one of those class of applications where Microsoft's Link server knows about the call setups, what quality of service you need to apply, a lot better than any networking equipment is ever going to do, unless you want to put a bunch of like really beefy deep packet inspection in there and try to guess for yourself, or try to pre-set up some quality of service policies, which kind of are subject to change, right? And
you're suggesting that there's a real-time collaboration
Yes.
between Link and
it's
not
a real.
just saying you're pressing a button to do a one-time set and forget it.
It's completely 100% real time. So each call setup has its own unique set of quality of service, and those are translated between the two. So a human can't do that.
So there's knowledge of the endpoint, there's knowledge of the switching path in between the two endpoints.
Exactly.
Deploying QoS in real time.
Yes.
To support that particular Link conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so we have this nice demo where it's like, everyone's kind of experienced this when you're on like some sort of virtual room or conference call, or someone's sharing a PowerPoint or sharing a video, and he's talking on one slide and you're waiting for that slide to refresh, or those types of things. So we can actually show how we have a sample network where we insert congestion into the network and show what happens to these calls when this congestion is inserted. And then we enable this communication between the controller and Link.
So in the interest of time, we've got Link in the booth, we've got Sentinel running in the booth as well, right, to make sure that you guys can get, there's only so much we can get through in 45 minutes, right?
Understood. I just wanted to hear exactly contextually
No,
what you're
absolutely.
talking about, so we know
Sure, yeah.
what we're talking about
I
here.
mean, Sentinel's pretty cool, but when you say SDN app, I actually don't. I look at Sentinel and say, okay, that's a part of a much bigger thing. I mean, at HP Protect, that's what I found out. What other apps are you talking about? Because even with Sentinel, to do the real heavy lifting, you have to pump the data out to some piece of big iron somewhere.
Yeah, I think there's a variety of applications, right? There's the Sentinel, which we were just mentioning. There's, I mean, even the Microsoft Link application is part of a broader toolkit, right? I mean, you have the network, then you have Link set up, and you got to have, I mean, then you have the customers. So, and then you have something like a cloud bursting, or like a cloud bursting app that we work with Intel and Verizon on being able to automatically provision and set
Okay,
up.
give me your definition of cloud bursting, because in my world, cloud bursting is an attack.
Okay.
It's a hack. So
Sure.
let's be real about what you're talking about here. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so we have, so there's a lot to it. So basically what we have is our network node manager monitoring the VM traffic. So within the VMs in your private cloud. So after it sees a kind of a spike in traffic, so I need more bandwidth, or I need more VMs spun up than what I currently have in my private cloud. So I want to actually change my load balancers. I want to set up a tunnel with unique QoS policies to, say, Verizon from my infrastructure, and I want to do that all in real time, and I want to spin it up and down. So what we can do is have our orchestration tool on either side, in the private cloud and the public cloud, that's kind of orchestrating this whole movement. So the network node manager, which detects that I need more VMs, signals to the orchestrator. Orchestrator will go set up new VMs in the public cloud. It will then signal the controller to set up quality of service for that across say, a private tunnel.
See, all you did was just increase my bandwidth through my virtual environment. I mean, you didn't really change anything.
And then I go make my load balancers say you can now load balance between my private cloud and my public
But
cloud.
that also depends on where you put your load balancers. If they're virtualized load balancers, which is in a lot of cases nowadays, this really just increases my traffic. Doesn't really give me a bandwidth boost unless I do geographic load balancing
Sure.
at a much higher level.
Sure.
So what I'm thinking about is if I'm looking at these apps and going, okay, these are deep inside my virtual environment, you just hairpinned right out of it. So I've doubled my network bandwidth, maybe tripled it because I may have to come back in before I can send the data back out. This is SDN. The SDN discussion that I see is happening is all these nice whiz-bang things that you're talking about are great. But if I'm double, tripling my bandwidth requirements and I'm already at my bandwidth max, that's not a big help.
Sure.
So you, at the beginning, said, about SDN, it's really about doing it right. It's you got to really have a good layer 2 design before you can even start doing this stuff.
I think that's not SDN though, that's networking.
Networking in general, this
In
is a
general.
horrible problem. SDN just makes it worse.
I don't think it
Says
makes
the virtualization guy.
Yeah.
Where SDN's landing. Everything for SDN is now landing in the virtual
It's your
environment.
fault we're doing this.
Probably,
I
not
think,
mine personally, but probably virtualization's a big push
Without
for it.
SDN, you're going out anyhow.
Well,
Now you have a bigger chance that it stays in.
no.
I think having,
Sort of.
with SDN, having centralized state, having things like Link or Citrix VDI or other applications that are able to signal to the network and ask for a level of service from the network, it gives us a toolkit that we haven't had previously because of that decentralized state. It just hasn't existed, right? And we'll get to this, but this isn't going to happen today, right? There's what, 30 years of networking to get where we are now to figure out, you know what, maybe if we go back in time, we should have taken some other steps. we are, as an industry, going to stumble a little bit. We're going to make some mistakes. We're going to learn from them very quickly, right, based on that 30 years shoulders of giants stuff. And we're going to fix those as we move forward, right? So obviously, do we want to create hairpinning and triple and double and triple the bandwidth? No, we don't, right? Are we probably going to end up doing that in some certain, is some programmer going to do it? Absolutely, they are, right? I go back in town, 15 years, right? Do you remember, anybody remember when Microsoft released the browser wars? They released IE5, right? And the TOS in it would set all the IE5 traffic to 5, and suddenly IE was faster than Netscape, right? Things like that are going to happen. They're going to be, it's just the nature of having open.
Yeah, so
Wouldn't it be a nice app to actually have the ability to find out where this traffic is going in the first place and have it route the right way before it even enters the network? I mean, before it enters the most congested part of your network, I should say. Kind of like a top layer type of device.
Yeah, I think that's all possible. I mean, it would be interesting to continue this conversation because we have with Intel and Verizon, like Intel IT is actually doing this with Verizon.
Yeah.
So it would be interesting to have a follow-on conversation where we can kind of dig in a little bit deeper just specifically on that.
Okay.
After this, for the sake of time, let's.
Yeah, you guys have a bunch of demos, right?
Yeah, we actually want to show some
like
meat to
demos.
this. So
we love demos.
yeah, so from this is the last slide here. Then we'll go into the meat of it. But basically, we understand this is a journey, right? We want to seed the market with the devices that are going to set customers up for SDN through OpenFlow enablement or overlays, tunneling, those types of things. So we already have 25 million ports in the market that are OpenFlow enabled, and we're expanding that to the routers as well. So we have 10 new routers that we just introduced with OpenFlow enablement, and we'll keep going from there. So there's a large marketplace for these applications. So we kind of see people now deploying, or customers now deploying these in their environments, creating a lab, starting to see, okay, what's benefits for my organization am I going to get out of SDN? Then we see in the first half of 2014, or really just across 2014, start deploying HP and our partner-based applications. So we really see a lot of enterprises adopting applications based off of what we can create, what we know within our partners. And then as they get more comfortable with SDN in the 2015 and 2016, they're going to probably start developing their own custom apps or working with their own partners to develop their apps and that make sense for their own environments. And again, there's customers across the whole cycle, like some insert themselves higher up or lower up or stop at some certain point depending on where they're at, because there's some more advanced or less advanced than others. But let's dive into these applications, or dive into some of these demos here. So one thing I wanted to quickly talk about is this SDN Dev Center that we created as part of this announcement. So we're releasing first in November our controller, our general availability, and with that controller a software development kit, or an SDN developer kit, that comes with it all the tools needed to develop SDN applications and have really low barriers. So we don't want to have, we're going to initially work with some of our large partners, which we announced about 22 partners that we're working with to see this application store, which the application store is going to be available in the first half of 2014. But what we're really working on is developing these apps, developing these use cases with our partners. But we also wanted to enable like a couple guys in the garage, kind of going back to HP's heritage of the Hewlett-Packard garage, and we actually have, I think, a picture of it here in our development tools platform. This is the actual garage that Hewlett-Packard started their business in Palo Alto. So what we wanted to do is enable those couple guys to develop with this. So with this kit, we're also enabling, the controller itself is $495 for the base license, which is 50 nodes, enough to get anyone off the ground. If they go join the Alliance One program, which is free as well to become a developer, then they get 55% off of that. So for a couple $100, they have a GA quality controller to develop on. And then with that, we provide them the tools that they need. So we have a simulator. So within a VM, we can see if everything's working here. So within a VM itself, you can just install a controller. So this is running on my laptop. You can install the controller of the VM. It's not an appliance, it's a download. So they can actually set up their own development environment within their computer. They can download tools like Mininet to simulate networks. So they can set up all the backend and start developing their application within this controller itself. And then when they're ready to actually go out and get this thing validated from HP, they can access our virtual lab setup. So, let's see, I think it's this one here. Virtual lab went down. Let me connect back in here.
So while he's doing that, one of the things that we really, as an industry, I think we having challenges with is SDN. I had a customer of mine say, it's taken you 15 years to become a good networking guy. And they had a whole bunch of Hadoop programmers. And I said, are you guys doing DevOps? And they're like, no, we tried it. It took them 15 years to become good programmers. And I said, okay, what's your point? He goes, I'm assuming you're not a good programmer because I can tell you they're not good network people. Right, so part of this is we need to create this education, this ecosystem to help networking folk and programmers on both sides come together and learn, have the whole the fallacies of distributed computing. We all quote that one, right? Have programmers learn that networks are not stable, they're not always the same. There is latency outside of a computer. It's not zero latency. All these things that as networking people we know because we've lived it for the last 20 years. So the Dev Central, this is really about trying to provide a place that's not just going to Usenet or some other open source education place and be able to have kind of vendor-sponsored, vendor training information available, right? So trying to create that, again, seed that lower part where we can start getting people who are interested in this, get a lot more information.
Yeah, so we already have on the site, it's if you go to sdndevcenter.hp.com, there's a bunch of resources already there. We're going to populate with the full SDK in November when the controller is released as well. So the SDK you can kind of download those resources without even getting the controller itself. But what already we have there is like a whole introductory series into developing SDN applications, from what is SDN, solution guides, technical overview of OpenFlow, how to use Mininet to simulate networks, how to set up your VM in Ubuntu, what the controller architecture is, like a really actually deep dive into what the controller architecture is from a development standpoint. We're going to have developer guides, programmers guides, all released on this, everything someone needs. So they spin up their VM, they start developing their application. Then in this virtual lab that we have set up, so there's going to be so this is our virtual lab interface. So we're actually hosting real HP gear in our labs. In different pods that will simulate real networks. So we can have a kind of a standard network topology that various customers use. So we might have like a couple, 2 or 3 different network topologies that they can go actually load their app into this. They can actually even from here view this, go into here and launch an application. Just say I want to go to VNC, go into my controller. See if this works here. The connection's a little slow, but the idea is that we have a couple of 2 different VMCs opening up. The idea is that you can, there we go. That you can load, you can go into the controller in the sample setup, upload your application, and test your application versus a validation suite. So we'll have a set of validation suites that they can run on their application and actually validate that it's working correctly on these real HP topologies.
So this is, again, not against Mininet, not against virtual software, against real hardware working in a real environment. So it's kind of, from the risk standpoint, it's, as an enterprise network operator, I'm not sure I would want to take a third-party app just out of random and just throw it on my controller and let's just see what happens, right? That's not going to happen. This isn't a jailbroken iPhone, right? We want to make sure that we have gone through that test, that validation, and make sure that we've done some degree of testing to make sure that if you're going to do this, that we at least jump through the first hoops.
So you're offering basically, because, well, let's just say it, you're offering Apple's version, which is a curated, tested, bulletproof method of allowing apps into my app store.
Yes.
from anybody that wants to submit them.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to have a couple varieties of applications. So we're going to have community apps, like we were talking about, where they just go through this validation step process to get into the App Store. And we will, of course, have the right to look at it and review it as well. It's not going to just automatically upload. We want to make sure there's no security risks that they're going to cause as well.
Now, are you going to offer these as, set it and forget it apps that I buy one time and push down into my environment as an end user, or are you going to do something in your model where it's service providers that are offering a monthly recurring fee for, say, I need a load balancer for the next 2 months to handle a traffic spike.
Sure.
I'm going to rent one from whoever the load balancer company happens to be, and then get rid of it when I don't need it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be a wide variety of models that we'll adopt from the purchasing standpoint. So likely a lot of the business apps that come from partners and et cetera will be bought directly from, like, say, a partner or from HP via PO. They'll get a license code from it to download the app, and then the app itself will have that built into it. And some of them, like, say, some of them may be free to download, or some of them may be cheap enough you can throw on a credit card. So we're going to offer a wide variety of mechanisms to download it. And
Explain your alignment with the Open Daylight project in this infrastructure. There's a lot of parallels here. Where's the overlap? Is there any compatibility with ODL and where it's going, or is HP kind of doing its own thing here?
I think with the App Store, we're part of Open Daylight.
Yeah.
So part of this App Store is really the integration through these northbound APIs. So we're committed to pushing the standards, right? So if we can all kind of come together on a standard northbound API, then absolutely, it'll work wherever it's at. But right now, there is no standard. They're all open APIs. We provide them, but it's not a quote-unquote standard yet.
Is it fair to say the HP perspective then is this real standardization isn't going to come in the controller itself as much as the northbound API? The controller will be whatever it needs to be to deal with the hardware in the southbound direction. As long as the northbound API is consistent, an app writer can write that app to that standardized northbound API, and it's going to work on whatever the controller and the underlying hardware is.
Yeah, I think in the end, that's a good vision. And we're also, there's definitely a place for an open source controller as well, depending on the type of customers that want it. But everyone's going to kind of take from the open source and put into their own version, and kind of take from their own version and put in open source as well. I think having an open source controller is also a good thing as well, which is why we're part of Open Daylight. But there's too many moving parts and mechanisms to kind of say there's only going to be one or the other. And then to our point with what we worked with VMware, is that we understand there's going to be multiple controllers possibly. So there may be an NSX controller within controlling the virtual overlay, and there may be our controller on the underlay. So we created this concept of east-west APIs, kind of like a federation of the controllers. So you can have like a view of the underlay and overlays and et cetera.
Throw up my mouth a little at the thought of multiple control. You're never going to be able to troubleshoot this friggin' network if it doesn't work. I'll tell you what.
Okay.
Talk about shifting your point of contention.
But your point is.
Okay. So we'll go, I know we're starting to run kind of late on time. I wanted to get to this demo here too. Let me just show you real quick what the download looks like into the controller itself. So hopefully this works here. I'm remote desktoped into a developer's system in Palo Alto here. So if it doesn't, I can just give you a video or something like that.
We're getting to see the sausage made. This is great.
So this is, let's go to. So this is the
really good security.
So this is the controller here in the developer environment. So we have in applications. So right now we have this application monitor running. So let's just uninstall it for now. We want to reinstall it later on. Reload. So now nothing's running. So we have this new idea of downloaded applications along with some of our standard applications. So we actually integrated the App Store directly into the controller itself. So we can go to the App Store, go to an app. So we're actually providing this app for free to everyone, as well as the source code to it. It's kind of like our sample app. So we click on it. You can kind of see the application, and you can get screenshots. You can see like user ratings to some details about it, user ratings, We can put links to videos and all that kind of stuff in here. So if we click download, let me just create a new user here.
Can you use our Apple ID to download?
That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
In the same way on our iPhone that we go, hey, I ignore update on the app. How many times are we going to do
I
that?
may be sick, but my Apple ID is a Hotmail account, so you know.
Okay.
It'll
So
integrate with Touch
then I
ID.
click download, and then basically, since this is, so we'll have different options. We can create an app store within like IMC, have like a major like kind of overall framework, or we can download it directly on the controller. So this, I'm actually on the controller, so I just click current device, click install, and then it will start downloading. I don't know if it, okay. Sometimes I miss the download. It's actually a really small file. Oh, there it goes. So the download, so then I go to the applications again, and now it's back and active. So then if I go into my screen, refresh, it shows up down here as a new application. So this application just monitors HTTP traffic or URLs that are going and showing here. We just have a browser on loop to hp.com in our network. So that's kind of how it is. So it's actually fairly simple and straightforward. We actually will have a middle step in there when it's deployed, where it's actually, it doesn't become active automatically. You have to actually go press start, because I think some enterprises fear download and install right away. It's not Angry Birds on your phone, it's on your enterprise network. So we want to kind of put that middle.
My 2 cents on the App Store is, you know, it looks great and all of that, and might help HP get more traction if you supported Open Daylight in the App Store and say, hey, we built this framework for an App Store you can download to a controller, and hey, ODL guys, why don't you, hop on board and add ODL apps in here? That would be a great association for HP to make, because even though the first 2 slides that you show how long HP's been tied up in it, somehow you keep falling out of the conversation. I don't know why that happens, but I think that would be a great way to get the name out there and really trumpet it out. It's integrated with ODL.
So let me ask this question, because this actually is going on right now. What's the value add for me as an app developer to write an app for your app store? So obviously, I have a limited amount of time that I would have to create an app, test it, and push it out there.
Sure.
How am I going to make money from deploying it to HP? What happens if I run into a situation where someone says, well, if you have it in the HP SDN App Store, you can't have it in the Cisco App Store or the Brocade App Store or whatever? And
Who's going to say that?
I mean, the other lessons of Apple.
Yeah. Who buys a Windows phone? Because there's no apps in there.
And not just that, but let's just say that this App Store model, it's all of your customers. Who am I competing against there? I have a very limited number of eyes looking at my app in your App Store.
Yeah, I think that's
the other question after that is, how do we know who's actually looking at it inside of HP? Can we get an audit log? Is there any other type of transparency in that? We don't get it through Apple.
No,
But should we get? So they could steal all of our technology and write their own app, and we're SOL.
Sure.
HP can't put themselves in that position
Sure.
Why not? If Apple can.
because they're not Apple.
We're nicer.
Do you have to be? I mean,
I think
I get your point, but
You're talking about apps that are not going to be $2 to $3 each. You're talking probably apps that are going to be thousands of dollars each,
Sure.
including intellectual property
Yeah,
and things like
Not
that.
necessarily. I mean, maybe, but not necessarily. I think there are going to be
Well, if it comes from
small
Short,
apps.
but if it comes from ShoreTel or companies like that, yeah.
Yeah.
If it's going to come from somebody's garage, probably not.
I think there'll be a mix. There'll be a mix of
Yeah.
small, interesting little apps that do something, solve some little problem. Then there'll be big enterprise management scale apps that solve some major problem that are going to cost a lot of money.
And all they do is
Sure.
with SDN is they just write a hairpin out to their big management platform and comes back in.
Yeah.
so I get the fact that HP wants to check, like Apple does, check the validation of the app. Would it be possible to publish an unvalidated and maybe have that as a remark? This is an unvalidated app. if I want to write an app for myself and it doesn't have to be validated,
Yeah,
would
so
that be an option
there.
or not?
Yeah, it is. So we actually, I skipped that slide on a lot of the details of the App Store, but we have a private portal for customers that want to develop their own app, so they can actually have their own interface to the App Store.
And that wouldn't even show up in a public
No,
app store.
it won't.
That's amazing. I like that.
It's the on-premise enterprise iOS
It is.
development model.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, the other thing is that are you going, instead of actually having somebody review my code, why not just run it straight through Fortify to start with?
Right through what?
Fortify to start with.
Yeah.
Put Fortify inside that process, so
Sure.
at least you're doing some static code analysis to say,
Sure,
are
yeah.
you violating these basic tenets
Yeah.
for security? And then go
Yeah, a
from
lot of
there.
that will be part of our. So we have the virtual lab simulation suite, but like there's actually a validation test that'll run through code and run through the
Are you
network
using
and run through.
Fortify to do that?
I'm not sure what it
Like
is.
CSS validation in a web page.
Well, that's different. Fortify is going to be looking at like just the base OWASP top 20 plus a bunch of other coding problems.
Sure.
We're not talking CSS here. We're talking real code. If
Yeah.
someone stuck a security bug in that, especially
Yeah.
inside of an SDN app, that opens up. That will
Yeah.
basically take a can opener to my whole network.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's going to be a wide variety of apps, and I think a lot of what's going to come first is we have a joint development model as well as our own apps. So we have and also our partner apps, which we have a bit more support that stand behind it versus just a community validated apps. So we have like HP apps, which HP supports, jointly developed apps, which HP supports, partner apps that go through a lot more validation, and the partner actually stands by the support for. And then there's the community apps, which are kind of the self-validated things that are. And
Yeah,
it depends on the
shouldn't be
enterprise.
Shouldn't be self-validated. Apple does a really good job of keeping a lot of crap out of their
Yeah. No, there's definitely.
their app store. You guys
Yeah.
can do the exact same thing. If
Absolutely.
you follow the Android model, it's going to be a complete disaster because
No,
you're going to
yeah.
allow something that should never be in my network in the network.
Absolutely. So that.
You just gave me a perfect way in. If you do
Yeah.
this, I can just put out a community app that
Sure.
everybody loves, and now
I think-
I can get all your data.
I'll go back to what I said at the beginning, is there's a lot of stuff in here that, yeah, there's the obvious parallels to the Apple model. There's a lot of things that aren't different, right? You know, one of the biggest ones is, okay, I'm an enterprise customer, I'm a Fortune 1500. How do you send a PO to Apple for the App Store? Right? There's some real like 101 stuff that, you know, we've gone through a lot of this thinking, have we got everything? I would love to say yes, but there's always going to be somebody who comes up with something else, and we'll adjust mid-flight. We'll figure that out, right? I have no knowledge of this. I'd be very surprised if we're not using Fortify. Right? That was one of the. It's kind of one of those. We kind of have this tool over here that does kind of that. So.
Yeah, so we're actually using a lot of our back-end infrastructure. It's actually really interesting. When I started digging into this project, I actually logged in, and we have a whole. We're putting to market what our developers use. So our developers use a whole suite of tools to develop HP applications. So we're basically taking all of those things that we use for ourselves to put applications out there and kind of transforming it, because we want to make this enterprise grade, right? That's the goal. It's not the Android goal. It's not it's even bigger than the Apple goal. This has to be enterprise grade in order for it to work. So we have a lot of hooks in behind. So maybe we can move on into this real quick, because we're at the last little piece
I have
here.
a feeling we're going to be doing this quickly, so we'll go through the fast version. So one of the things, one of the topics for me personally as a network management guy that doesn't get dealt with enough, I think, is network management in an SDN world. Right? We're all talking about the controller as if it's network management. There's a lot of parallels that get drawn to that, but what happens when your controller goes down? Right? What happens when you start having, performance issues on your controller? What happens when you start having a memory leak, a SQL leak, right? These things, controllers nowadays, they're running Linux, they're running an operating system. Things go wrong with those. What happens when a power supply fails on your controller? What happens when you've got a team of controllers and one or two of them falls over, right? All those things have to be dealt with. So building on the legacy of HP, and arguably we actually invented network management with OpenView, right? That's one of the things that we've looked at, is incorporated this into IMC, so the Intelligent Management Center, which is from the HP networking side of the house. And we have an SDN management module, which the point of this is leveraging the service-oriented architecture. How many buzzwords can I use? On IMC, I'm doing good so far.
Cloud, software time.
Yeah, sensibly designed networks, right? That's what I'm going for. And we're taking the traditional heterogeneous management of that we've had for years in the industry. You know, how do we do traditional config management, traditional performance, like the whole FCAPS, fault configuration accounting, performance security, and apply that and bring that into an SDN world. So there's a lot of things that SDN is going to change. I don't think from an operational model that operations is not one of them, right? It changes perhaps how specifically what we're doing, but it's not going to change what we need to do, right? We need to monitor our networks, we need to monitor the health of the networks, and we need to figure out what's going on, right? We need to have visibility. So we've got the SDN manager here. Let me see if I resize this, if it actually gets to the right page. Okay, well, we'll try it. So over here, there's the secret to the universe. So basically in here, we've got resource management, how many controllers we have, how many OF devices, how many OpenFlow enabled switches that we have, right? And I would, to your earlier comment, how many controllers are we going to have? We're probably going to have a few. Yeah. Right? Because I don't think, although we have this idea of this SDN-enabled network with this master magical controller sprinkling pixie dust up here that's going to do our entire enterprise network, I don't think that's realistic at all. I personally think there's going to be different controllers for different architectural blocks within the network. And obviously within those architectural blocks, you're going to have at least probably 2 from an HA standpoint, possibly more than that depending on the scale of your network, right? So you have to have some kind of a health validation and be able to figure out what's out there. And if you start thinking of large enterprise networks that have multiple campuses, you may have multiple controllers for each of the campuses, right? So this is the architectural stuff that, quite honestly, I think we've got some ideas, but I don't think we're 100% there as figuring it out yet. Right, so we also have built into this the OpenFlow topologies. Right, so what's really kind of cool about this is that we've overlaid the traditional topology right along with our OF topologies. So not only do we have the ability to go in and...
So IMC's talked to the controller here and learned the topology that
Yes.
the controller has learned, and now you've got a...
So IMC's got its own normal topology, so CDP, LDP, MSDP, all the discovery, all that stuff from a traditional, this is what we've done for 20 years. I've got that topology. I've also got the controller topology and learn what its view of the world is. And then I'm overlaying them on top of each other, so I can actually go in here and say, okay, let's look at which one of these are pure OF devices, right? Everything else goes to gray, right? Which ones go, are a hybrid device, so this might be, part of it might be doing traditional networking, and part of it might be OpenFlow enabled, certain ports. And then I've also got my my non-OF devices. So I've got my router, maybe a couple of core switches. That might be the function of that, and there's no way that I want to have OpenFlow on it at this point in time, right? Or maybe routers up until the announcement. We didn't have OpenFlow routers, right? So we have the capability to kind of figure out who's doing what where. Because from a troubleshooting standpoint, as you said, even without multiple controllers and an overlay underlay, the math and the I understand spanning tree doesn't work anymore, right? Nowadays we had, worst case, you had link egg groups. So now you've got, is it hash 1 or hash 2? Now things are going to get really, really interesting where you can have these multiple paths all over the place, right? So we've also got the ability to take that flow path from and again, from the controller, and I can actually tell you that everything from Austin to Boston is going to go through that flow path. Right? So I'm actually taking that topology information from the controller and overlaying this on top of your existing environment. So you can start to have some idea of, how do these things actually fit together in your networks today. Right?
And IMC is talking to the controller. He's not pulling OpenFlow tables from switches.
Yes, both. I have to have knowledge of both, right? Because most of the time it's going to be talking to the controller, but in a hybrid environment, I'm going to have knowledge and have direct SNMP access to the switches today right now. Right?
But just in the OpenFlow context.
Yes.
He's talking to the controller and assuming the controller is going to give him an honest answer of what's going on.
Yeah. So in general, because of the different protocols and mechanisms we have to gather all this information, we're going to try to gather as much as we can to make the best decision, right? You don't necessarily want to listen to one person in the world, especially in networking, right, on the root bridge. Right, and as we go through this, we also, of course, have our controllers, so controller teams, what apps are loaded on those controllers, how many OpenFlow devices are being managed by those controllers. So again, this is a large network environment, enterprise environment, which is simulated here. It says, okay, I've got all these different apps. Right? I think that's the other thing that's going to start to get interesting here, is just like with traditional networking management. Do you have the same version of code running on every one of your HP 5500 EIs, or are you rolling the dice and trying to play what bug do I have here today?
Is that app deployed on all controllers or not?
What version of app is
Yes.
on which controller, right? So we've
Can I track controller utilization sorts of things, like number of flow status per second requests that are coming inbound, these kind of things?
controller stats reports, logical left statistics, flow interest, graphic statistics, all that's going to be pulled, and historical analysis on it. So I can do that over day, week, time, real-time analysis directly from there. All the above.
Now, is Sentinel and everything else like that pulled into here in some way so I can manage it from one place, or is that still a tipping point?
No. So Sentinel is pulled in here. It depends on what you're looking for, right? Because Sentinel, there's parts of it that's coming from the DB from tipping point. From the OF, from the OpenFlow standpoint, how many Sentinel rules have been applied?
Now, can I?
You guys are playing with me here, so I'm trying to jump around in the interest of time. No, I'm fine.
Well, the other thing is, if it
So basic information, right? So for third-party apps, we may not get this level of information, right? Because obviously this is HP working with HP, right? So I'm able to go in and pull out port malicious IP address block top 10, which ports were blocked. There's actually the port information down here. This was gate 108, for instance, right? All that kind of stuff is within here right now. Usability, all the accessibility, how many app license counts have been in there. So of course, enterprise, we're vendors. We'd like to make money, right? We want our partners to make money. Yeah, I know you're shocked, right? So there's going to be some concept of app licensing on here. How many ports, and each app is going to be licensed slightly different. Is it a per appliance app? Is it a per port? How many? That's a different question to figure out, right?
Well, the other question I have is, say something besides an edge device, an access layer device fails, can this detect it and automatically reroute, or does there an SDK where I can detect it and automatically do my own rerouting? Or if this detects really, really horrible traffic patterns in OpenFlow, it'll actually reroute to a more efficient one?
And this is what happens a lot, you're confusing the function of the network management platform with the controller.
Well, if it fails, I want the management platform to reroute stuff.
No, you want the controller to reroute.
Well, if the control's dead, it's not going to.
Well, that's why you have HA, you have multiple controllers, so you can, spin Tom up in a truck and replace the controller, right? That's what he wants to do. So, no, you want to have the ability to have the controller, but you want to have the operations team notified that that controller just died, right? You don't want a network management platform automating your entire routing table.
Well, I'm not talking about the routing table. I've
The
seen HA.
equivalent.
I've seen HA completely and utterly fall on its face.
Yeah.
I want this thing to tell me that it's fallen on its face and do some corrective action, because I've already lost my routing table by then.
I mean, that's architecturally though, the controller does that. All the management station's going to do is just reflect to you, tell you what the state of things are, and give you some
Well, if it's really in a horrible state.
I will tell you,
I want some way to look at this and say, is the health of my network good? If it is not, I need to be able to take a corrective action regardless, because this is the one pane of glass I may be looking at.
So I've got some trouble analysis here, right?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. That's the role of the controller, though. The controller would do that.
So this is what we can provide, right?
Yeah.
So we've got automatic trouble analysis in here. So I'm going to actually, using OF tools, this is like an OpenFlow trace route kind of thing going on, sort of, right? So I'm going to go in, I'm going to check my link jitter, packet loss, delay, device reachability, memory, CPU for the controller as well as the devices within that path, and identify where in the path, most likely, which in this case is here, we've got abnormal delay of 134 milliseconds. Right, so those kind of things that break into how do I translate SDN into something that's actually manageable and provide the right amount of visibility to the people who are looking at it, right? So one of the other cool ones, because I am right at the end of time here, that this is just, because this is awesome. So service flows, so although IMC is not acting as an application, we do have some ability to instantiate and inject flows directly into the OpenFlow controller network, right? So I can go in here and I've got my OF network, I've got all my spider links all over the place. And though I could do the good old controller, you know, one by one by one, and go down here in the bottom and add in my flow parameters. I can also do an auto, in which case I'm going to grab a couple. Just grab that guy and that guy and show me what his shortest path is. And so this will actually go through and calculate shortest path, right? Which is kind of cool, but not necessarily the optimal path, right? So I've actually also got optimal path here. So I'm going to the controller, I'm calculating link bandwidth, so I can take into account that if this guy up here is a 40 gig link, and this guy's a 1 gig links for bypass, you know, maybe
Like
I...
a GPS.
No, GPS,
Now-
that's the next version.
Now, can this go query the switches, the controllers to say, is this actually in play? Could it show me what's really in play versus this? And
Is that
if it's
existing
not,
information or pulling information?
I think
This
it's
is-
calculating it.
This is calculating information, so this is a bidirectional feedback happening from IMC, knowing what's there right now. And eventually, once we get further down the road, you can start doing things like calculating the performance stats and bringing them back in and figuring out exactly what's happening on these links. So yeah, this is a 40 gig link, but is it 95% saturated?
So that's
Right.
that's the question. Is that
It's
how
not
much
that right
time?
now.
How much time between the moment that I'm asking it and the exact information could
Right
what's
now,
the
it's-
time lapse you can have?
It's static information based on the bandwidth stats, right? So this isn't real time. I know exactly what's going on in all directions. Omniscient, all-powerful control, right? This is, I'm making the best information I have based on the guesses that I've got.
Can I get that information of what really is happening instead of just making a best guess?
So that was what we were looking at up here. So that's the OF topology of actually what's...
Can you do a comparison on the screen, like show me where it really is going versus the optimal path?
Right now, no.
That would be really cool, because if it's not the optimal path, and it's a really critical resource, I'm not talking 2 terminals, but 2 servers,
Yeah.
it would be really nice to say, take this path because it's the optimal path, and make it a higher.
Like, I don't know, it gets fuzzy with OpenFlow because you could have an app that's defining a peculiar path for a specific reason as defined by the application. I need to
Sure.
push the traffic through this path because of whatever. So it gets kind of weird.
I know it gets weird, and that's the problem, it
Or,
gets
you
too
know, I might
weird.
have a low bandwidth application that I'm going to go over here and dedicate that path only to
Yeah.
these 100 meg links.
Yeah.
It's absolutely dedicated.
Then I should be able to see whether or not it's dedicated in here. I need to be able to see from one location
that's-
all this information.
That's what I was saying, that the OF topology, this is for instantiating new service flows, right?
No, but I'm talking about, if there's a reason it's going through that path, I should be able to pick up this reason from clicking on that path and saying, give me why it's here. I need documentation. Don't give me, somebody just came up with something. No, it's not good enough. I'm going to be troubleshooting this in the dead of night.
Yep.
I don't have access to the app owner. I'm not going to go and call him. I'm
I'll
gonna
give you the
fix
total
it.
cop-out answer here. Unfortunately, there's human beings involved.
Well, then give me a way to document it.
So that's,
If I'm going to instantiate a new flow with that problem,
Yep.
with that limitation, I better be able to see it in here as a documentation.
yep. It's good feedback.
We're running out of time.
Okay, I think we're gonna have to end it here. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good demo. I'm very excited to see this.
Yeah, we're just trying to kind of make SDN a reality with both from management applications, all the OpenFlow enable switches, kind of tie all the pieces together.
Very cool. All right, thank you all for joining us as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.